This is literally your #1 guide to doing well in waist exams. If you're not sure where to start here. Syllabus. So to start with, on functional anatomy, we have bones. The bones we need to remember are humerus. Now, a good way to remember the humerus, which is the bone that goes from your shoulder joint to your elbow joint, is that it's right next to your funny joint. So humerus, funny. The next two bones we need to know are your radius and your ulna. Now, when I was in school, my friends and I used to get these confused because they are the two bones in your forearm. However, one of them is on the outside and one of them is on the inside. An easy way to remember this is something called RU shackering. So I always go RU shackering like this. And basically when you put your thumb out, the R indicates that the radius is on the outside. And when you put your pinky out, the U indicates that the ulna is on the inside. So RU shackering makes a shacker. Now, the next one we need to know is your femur, that massive bone in your upper part of your leg. And it is sandwiched in between your quadricep and your hamstring. For your femur, you have something called your patella. So if you were to tap on your knee, that bone on the top, that is called your patella. And then we have two bones in your lower leg. Now we have one called your tibia and one called your fibula. Another two that used to get confused when I was in school. A good way to remember it is tibia, for me, rhymes with timber, and timber is a hard plank of wood, and so is your tibia. Your tibia is the bigger bone on the front of your shin, so if you were to hold your shin, you feel that, that's your tibia, and your fibula is like a softer bone, a smaller bone behind your tibia in your calf. Then we have our pelvis, which is here. And coming up, you have something called your spinal cord. Then you have your sternum, which is in here. And then that's connected to your rib cage, so your rib cage actually protects your lungs and your heart. Moving along to the metacarpals, metatarsals, phalanges, and so forth. Your metacarpals are in your hands, and your metatarsals are in your feet, and your carpals are in your wrist, and your tarsals are in your feet. Now, to remember the difference is T for toes, and then the other one for your hands. So tarsals, metatarsals will be in your feet for toes, and metacarpals will be in your hand. We have something called phalanges, which are just another word for your fingers, so finger phalanges. Did you know that your bicep is called your bicep because it has two heads? And therefore your tricep is called your tricep because it has three heads. So what muscles do we need to learn in functional anatomy? The first one on the list is your bicep. So bicep is here, so think about a bicep flex. Biceps here, and where do you think your tricep is? It is on the other side, so over here. And we call those antagonist pairs, which we'll go into later on. Now, our next muscle on the list is our gastrocnemius, which is basically your calf muscle, and it also is next to your soleus, which is another part of your calf muscle. Anyone that goes to the gym, we have something called your traps or your trapezius. Did you know the trapezius is called that because it is actually the shape of a trapezius? So that is on your back, your upper back, there you go. Then we have something called your deltoid, which basically sits here, delt and delt. We have something called your quadricep. Now, knowing that we know a bicep is because it has two heads and a tricep is because it has three heads, a quadricep has four. So a quadricep is made up of actually 4 muscles in your quadricep. Moving down your leg, you have the tibialis anterior, which is on the front of your shin there. So for those that do go to the gym, we have your abductor groups, so that's your glutes, so gluteus maximus, gluteus minimus, and hip flexors in here. And back to the back, we also have something called your lats, which makes that Dorito shape here, so they come out here. So often swimmers have massive lats, and they're called Doritos because they look like. And then we have our pecs, so we have pectoralis major and then pectoralis minor, which sits on top. And there you have all the muscles of the body that you need to know for Year 11 ATAR Studies Functional Anatomy. Now we're going to move on to the characteristics of skeletal muscle. 4 characteristics you need to know according to the syllabus. The first one is excitability. Excitability is the ability for a muscle to contract in response to a chemical or electrical signal. The next characteristic is contractibility, the ability for the muscle to actually contract. The third one is extendability. That is the ability for a muscle to stretch beyond its resting normal length. The fourth one is elasticity, which is the ability for the muscle to return to its resting length after it has been stretched. The next part of the syllabus is muscle movement. So how do muscles actually move? So movement is created by muscles pulling on a bone or tendon. Now muscles can only pull, they cannot push. So that is why we have something called antagonist pairs. When muscles work, they always contract in pairs. When one is contracting, the other is relaxing. So previously in this video, I talked about the bicep and tricep being antagonist pairs. So when a bicep is contracting, the tricep is relaxing or extending, and vice versa. The bicep would be the agonist. So they are moving. Think about it as agony. You're in agony when you're contracting your bicep. And the antagonist would be the tricep. When we talk about antagonist pairs, we need to know where the origin and insertion is. This is where the muscle attaches to the bone or the tendon. The origin tends to be a fixed point of the muscle joint. So in this example, the origin would be up here because that is the fixed joint in the flexion movement of a bicep curl. It is not moving. That is the origin. The insertion would be down here where the elbow joint is because that is moving in this movement. So when we're describing actions done by the muscles, we talk about types of movement. So you can't just say, I move my arm like this. By year 11, you should be describing it in terms of PE studies terminology. So when we move our arm like this is called flexion. Now flexion can be described as when the muscle shortens. So this is flexion, and then this would be extension because it's extending. Opposite with the tricep. So it's to do with the shortening and the lengthening of your muscle. Now the next movement on your syllabus is called supination and pronation. Supination is like so. So that is when you move your hands out like this. So in your anatomical position, you supinate like that and you pronate like that. So you would use this movement in tennis. So that's a good example. Sometimes you're wondering why are we learning this. In tennis, you supinate when you forearm or back arm. Same with hockey. Now to remember supination and pronation, I think about soup. So when I'm eating soup, I'm bringing my arms like this, soup, and then the other one must be pronation. So supination, pronation. Next down the list, we have circumduction. So think about circumduction like this. It makes a cone. So swimmers use circumduction for butterfly, freestyle, backstroke. So this is circumduction. Happens usually at your shoulder joint. Some may question if it happens here, which it does, so in breaststroke as well. So circumduction is when your movement is going around in a circle like so. It is not the same as rotation, which is your head, because you cannot fully rotate your head backwards, can you? So it is restricted to just that left and right. The next one we have down the list is dorsiflexion and plantarflexion. So let's say this was my foot. Dorsiflexion is when you were to say plant your heel on the foot and then go from there. So it decreases the angle between the floor and your foot. Plantarflexion is when you go on your toes and come up. You go on your toes and come up and increases the angle between the ground and your foot. So dorsiflexion, plantarflexion. And the last two we have is adduction and abduction. Now, I think about adduction as adding to the center line of your body in the anatomical position. So let's say you're standing like this. Adduction would be going from here and bringing your arms down, like so. Abduction with a B is I think about it like an alien abducting you away from the center line of your body. So abduction would be bringing your arms up like so. So if anyone's gone to the gym and you've used the abductor machine, when you adduct, you use your hip flexors to bring in. And when you abduct, you use your glutes to push out. Bit of a tongue twister, but you need to remember abduct and adduct. Now we are moving on to the circulatory system. So what are the functions of the circulatory system? The first is to transport blood around the body. Second is to transport oxygen from the lungs through the heart and then from the heart to your muscles and your brain. Third function is to remove CO2 from the body through your lungs. The fourth is to maintain body temperature, and the fifth is for white blood cells to fight against infection. Now the structure of the circulatory system includes the heart, arteries, veins, capillaries, and blood. Now, did you know that the heart is actually a muscle? And you're probably thinking, yeah, I knew that, but that means you need to actually train the heart. This is why it is so important you do cardiovascular training at least once a week, because your heart, like every other muscle in your body, needs to constantly be trained. It is like they say, use it or lose it. So a good way to remember the difference between arteries and veins is arteries carry blood away from the heart. So A for away, and veins carry blood towards the heart. Now veins are often blue. Why do you think veins are blue? Veins are blue because they're carrying blood away from your muscles towards your heart. So away from your muscles towards your heart, and they consist of CO2, carbon dioxide, which comes up as blue. It is not red because there's no oxygen in there. It is only CO2. And so arteries carry the red blood away from your heart to your working muscles. And capillaries are the little blood vessels in and around your heart and lungs that allow for something called diffusion. So that means the CO2 can come from the heart to the lungs to get breathed out, and the oxygen can come from the lungs into the heart to get used by the body. Finally, we move on to blood. Blood has 3 functions. The first function is transportation of water and nutrients. Second is regulation of the body's temperature. And the third is to protect your body from infection. We move on to the respiratory system. This is the final part of the topic functional anatomy. There are 4 functions of the respiratory system. The first one is deliver oxygen from the atmosphere through your mouth and nose to your lungs. The second is to provide a method for gaseous exchange between your heart and your lungs. So this is the transfer and swap of CO2 and oxygen. The third is to create speech, and the fourth is sense of smell. The mechanics of breathing includes 2 steps. The first is inhalation or inspiration, which is when you breathe in. This means that the diaphragm contracts and pulls down, allowing for your lungs to open up and receive that oxygen inside. The second is exhalation or expiration, which is when you breathe out and the diaphragm relaxes and brings up your lungs to make it smaller to allow the CO2 to come out. So your diaphragm is a muscle underneath your lungs which contracts and relaxes, allowing you to breathe. When we talk about gaseous exchange between the lungs and the heart, we need to know what the term alveoli is and bronchi. So that is in your lungs, and there are little capillaries around your alveoli, and that allows for gaseous exchange to occur. So that allows for CO2 to come out and O2 to come in. And there you have it. We have covered everything in Year 11 ATAR Functional Anatomy Unit 1. So that is everything you need to know according to the syllabus in your exam. If you're not sure where to start to study, start with the syllabus. These are the main topics covered in that topic. I hope this video helped with anyone studying functional anatomy right now. I'm aware there are exams going on and you're preparing for your WACE exams. So my goal for you is to provide you with a different type of resource for you to learn with. If this helps you, then I have achieved my goal. All I want to do is provide you with more study skills and a different perspective on how you can study. I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you again on the next video.